It's great to be together. If you're joining us for the first time today, my name is Dan Kohler. I'm the pastor here, and we've been in the middle of talking about doubt. We're looking forward to Easter, but right now we're talking about our questions and our doubts and what do we do with those things. Last week, we looked at one of the characters out of the Old Testament in the Bible, Job, and how Job had everything, and a lot of everything really got taken away from him, and it started to make him question things, question maybe even the goodness of God or the justice of God and all of that, and we learned something. We learned that our doubts are not obstacles to God, they are opportunities for God to be revealed. We want to dive into it deeper today as we talk about our expectations and reality. You see, we get a little bit jarred when our expectations and reality don't align. Like just the other day, I really wanted a 70-degree and sunny day, and what we got was a 50-degree and cloudy with 50-mile-an-hour winds day. Yeah, it was bad. I decided to be really indoorsy that day, and Janine, she had expectations about the day as well, like when it's really windy, Dan, will you go out and get our outdoor furniture so it doesn't blow around? That expectation did not correspond with reality. I said, I guess it's going to be gone. It's okay, we'll get some more. I'm not going outside. But more seriously, there are moments where expectation don't meet reality, like when Janine and I got married. And we wanted to have kids. We had this plan for having kids. We wanted to get married, and then within a year to 18 months, we wanted to start our family. We wanted to be young parents. We got married young. We wanted to have kids young, and then we were just going to keep stacking them every 18 to 24 months. The only thing that we didn't have that we weren't agreed on is I wanted like 3 to 4 kids, and Janine wanted all of them. And so, we weren't on the same page there, but we did have this expectation about when we would start building our family. Well, that met a harsh reality. Really, life kind of came up and hit us, blindsided us. We had trouble getting pregnant. And then once we did get pregnant, we had trouble carrying the baby. So we had miscarriage. If you've ever had a miscarriage or a scare with one or infertility issues, you know that's a hard thing. Like, it doesn't matter how many other people can say, I've been where you are, it's still hard. It doesn't matter how common it is, right? That's difficult. And so eventually we had Asa, our oldest. And we thought, great, now the plan can continue. It's just going to be a little bit delayed. And then we tried, and it was hard again. And then we got pregnant, and then there was a miscarriage. And then it was hard again. And then we got pregnant, and then there was a miscarriage. And it was this cycle. And now we have 7 years between our kids. The plan did not go as expected. Our expectations and reality did not align. We have that all different places in our lives. And when these moments of truth, because it said that which corresponds with reality is truth, when we have these moments of truth in our lives, they can actually cause a lot of questioning and doubt and wondering. We're having one of these moments kind of societally as we look what's happening in Ukraine and Eastern Europe, and we're thinking, I never thought I would see that again or in my lifetime. If you're on the older end of the age spectrum, you might be thinking, I expected to never see some of these atrocities again. If you're on the younger end of the age spectrum, you're thinking, I thought I would only hear stories about what had happened in the past. But now reality hits us, and we have to reconcile our expectations with what was supposed to be, what we had hoped would be, what we thought might happen, with what actually is. We have to mesh these two things. And if we don't, we have this dissonance inside of us, and we feel that tension. We don't know what to do with it, and so we start asking questions. We start having doubts. We start reframing everything we use in order to interpret the world around us. It's really, honestly, these moments can be life-altering, really heavy, questioning moments for us. Now, if what we said last week is true, that questions are not obstacles, they're opportunities to see God revealed, then we want to know how to approach these questions, these moments of dissonance in life. Be able to ask questions about them, be able to pull apart some of the pieces and see what reality is against our expectations. We want to do that in a safe space, in a safe way, without all of life unraveling. How do we question and doubt safely? I want to invite you to turn to Matthew 27 as we look for an answer. Matthew chapters 27. If you don't have your Bible with you, that's okay. It will be on the screen up top. We're going to read through verse 37. Now, up to this point, we're kind of jumping again in the middle of a story. Up to this point, Jesus has already been betrayed by one of his closest friends. He's been abandoned by the rest of his friends. They're all just watching off to the sidelines, waiting to see what's happening. Jesus has been falsely accused by the religious elites, and they've turned him over because they couldn't exact the punishment they wanted to. They've turned him over to the public authorities because ultimately their end goal was to have Jesus killed. They wanted him completely out of the equation, not just punished, they wanted him killed. And so they brought him up on false charges that were big enough that they couldn't handle in their own jurisdiction of religious laws and punishments. So they had to turn him over to the local authorities in order to punish him. And so we're picking up on the other side of this trial. Jesus has been found guilty through a bunch of false witnesses, right? It took them a number of questioning and bringing forward different witnesses to actually get one that picked up on something even remotely true that Jesus said. False witness after false witness is brought forward, and finally somebody says something that Jesus had said, maybe with just a little bit of a twist and out of context, and now they have grounds for what they were hoping to do. That's where we pick up. Verse 27, then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and they put a scarlet robe on him and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him. They took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. And after they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. They led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." You see, that's the charge that they brought against Jesus. King of the Jews. They accused Jesus of being a traitor, being an insurrectionist against Rome. Because here's the expectations that people had of Jesus. Here's the expectations of what an insurrectionist might do. An insurrectionist, such as Jesus is being accused of, in the Jewish context, meant that he was the Messiah, the political Messiah. The expectations, the hopes of Israel is that the prophesied Messiah would come along and he would ride in on a white horse, unknown to anybody else, leading an army of Jewish faithfuls, overthrow the local government, reinstate the Jewish government, reinstate the religious practices, reinstate temple worship, and that Messiah would take the throne in that area and kick out Rome. That was the expectation. That was the charge, though it wasn't true, that the nation of Israel, the religious elites of Israel, brought to the Roman authorities, brought to Pontius Pilate, brought to his governing circle. That Jesus was an insurrectionist. He was treasonous. He was speaking against the throne of Rome, and therefore he needs to be put to death. And so after they put him through the mock trial, verse 27 says that the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. Now, the governor's soldiers would not have been exactly the Roman elite. In fact, they wouldn't have even been a part of the official Roman army. These are localized troops that the governor has put together. They probably looked like they were part of the Roman praetorium, but they weren't. They probably had all the right pieces and the right armor on, but they were just local people who were not Jews, and that was very important. It was important that they weren't Jews because they had to help govern the Jews. Now, that's where the problem comes in, and that's why some of the extra hostility seemed to be coming out against Jesus, because you see, Jesus is Jewish, and the governor's soldiers are not Jewish. And there's not good blood between the two. In fact, there's an incredible amount of racism between the Gentiles and the Jews, and the Jews toward the Gentiles as well. They were both very racist toward each other. And so what the governor's guard sees as an opportunity here is they see a chance to exact a pound of flesh out of at least one Jewish person. We've finally been given permission. Now we get to abuse the person. And so they torture him, and they beat him, and they spit on him, and they make fun of him. They know that the charge against Jesus is that he claimed to be king, that he had the true and rightful, he had the right place, the rightful heir to the throne, and that he should be in place of Pilate. So they take garments that look like their royal robes and they put them on him, but instead of giving him a golden crown or a true crown, they give him a crown of thorns. And they say, hey, this is what's fitting for you as a king. You claim to be king. Here is your kingdom. It's a kingdom of blood, it's a kingdom of pain, and it's a kingdom of thorns. That's what they do to Jesus. That's what they exact out of Jesus. And so now get the picture. We have this Jesus. We have this Jesus who comes onto the scene and he changes water into wine, just as a blessing at a wedding. We see this Jesus who, when somebody is close to death, he comes in and he heals their mother-in-law or their daughter or their loved one, and he gives them back to their family. We see this Jesus that wherever he goes, he seems to just be blessing people and garnering the favor of all the people, not because he's looking for some kind of celebrity status, but because that's just who he is. He's that kind of person that blesses people. This is the same Jesus who was on the mountainside, and there were over 5,000 people gathered around him, and he looks at them, has compassion on them, and he miraculously feeds them out of just a few loaves and dried fish, loaves of bread and dried fish. He multiplies that. That Jesus is now being tortured. A little while later, Jesus does it again with 4,000 people. He has compassion on them, and he feeds them miraculously. That Jesus is now on trial for insurrection. This Jesus that healed people, gave them back their dignity, gave them back their families and their place in society. This Jesus is now being condemned to death, and he's on a cross. And instead of being called the hope of the world, he's being called, in a mocking tone, the King of the Jews. That's the charge. You see, Jesus talked a lot about the kingdom. But he would often say, my kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my people would fight for me, but they're not fighting for me because my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is from heaven, a place where ruling looks like washing people's feet and healing the sick and restoring the broken. That's what Jesus' rule and reign looks like. If it looked like it was built on this world's power system, I would have people fighting for me, but I don't. And so Jesus takes the abuse. He is now on the cross. And if we pull back just a second and make just a few assumptions about what's going on here, we'll start to find out where some expectations don't line up with reality. You see, everybody who had been following Jesus for 3 years of his public ministry and watched him do all of those things, watched him raise the dead, watched him feed the hungry and be with the sick and have compassion on people that the rest of society didn't have compassion on. They had this expectation that maybe he is who he says he is. Maybe he really is the Messiah. Maybe this whole kingdom that he's talking about in a different way, maybe we actually need to start believing that. But now they see that Messiah, that hope, that expectation, they see that on the cross. In fact, the story continues on that Jesus' closest friends and family are watching all of this happen. If you read different gospel accounts, you'll see that there are different eyewitnesses to it, which means that Jesus' closest friends, while they abandoned him, they were watching from the outer circle in the crowd as Jesus is being beaten and put on trial, as Jesus is being led down a path to be crucified. Crucified at Golgotha. As all of this is happening, those crowds that Jesus had once drawn around himself now draw around him again, but they're watching something different. And their expectations of what they had hoped and what they had thought would happen as they followed Jesus are not lining up with reality. But wait, wasn't this Jesus who said that thing? But didn't he do that? We saw him raise the dead. So maybe even now, as they're watching Jesus on the cross, they have certain expectations. And we could hear it from some of the other stories that are told around the crucifixion of Jesus. He saved others. Why doesn't he save himself? Couldn't he call a host of angels to take him down off the cross? Couldn't he do whatever he wants to if he says, if he is who he says he is? Then can't he just come off the cross? Can't he just end this? There were still expectations that weren't corresponding with reality. In fact, as we continue reading on, we're going to jump down to chapter 57, or to verse 57 in the same chapter. After all of these expectations were being spoken out, and after Jesus is on the cross, and after he actually gives up his last breath, speaks his last words, and gives up his spirit, we see that he's dead and evening is approaching in verse 57. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting opposite the tomb. So, the hopes and expectations people had of Jesus as he lived, those following closely behind him, they see their hopes and their expectations on the cross and they start questioning things. And even in the midst of the questioning, they're thinking maybe there's something else going to happen, but then Jesus gives up his last breath. Now, maybe at this point they're thinking, you know what, he's dead, but we've seen him restore the dead to life. Death was nothing as an obstacle to Jesus. He did it before, he could do it again, right? We like to say that in the church. I think they were thinking the same thing. Only now they're saying it as they see Jesus' lifeless body come off the cross, and one of Jesus' fringe followers, or maybe secret followers, Joseph of Arimathea, who's described as a rich man. We know he's rich because he has an unused, clean tomb. You don't have an unused, clean tomb sitting around unless you have a lot of money, okay? Joseph of Arimathea goes and he leverages his social status in front of Pilate, and he says, hey, give me the body. Give me the body. I want to put it in the ground. I want to give him an honorable burial. What we see out of Joseph of Arimathea is an incredible break in rank from his social status. Joseph would have spent time with the religious and the cultural elite, the rich and the affluent, both in religious and outside of religious circles. And so now he's breaking ranks with them, all to honor a Jewish man. I think if we pull back the curtain maybe just a little bit on Joseph, we see something else. We see that maybe Joseph has his own questions, and he's dealing with it in a different way. Maybe instead of walking away from Jesus, maybe he's thinking, you know what, all my hopes and dreams seem to have been crucified on that cross with Jesus. And now the best thing that I can do in the midst of that is give the man an honorable burial. Maybe I can lay my expectations that I had that didn't correspond with reality alongside Jesus in the unused tomb that I had. Maybe then I'll just get a little bit of closure. And I can put to rest my questions and my doubts that I'm having now, because what I thought would happen wasn't happening. So now the best I can do is honor this man. As scholar R.T. France describes the situation, in mentioning the unused tomb and the clean shroud, Matthew emphasizes the care and reverence of Joseph's treatment of the body. Joseph is honoring Jesus, if for no other reason than to at the very least have some closure in what he hoped would happen. You see, Joseph too was a follower. Maybe he was a secret follower, but he watched everything that Jesus did and he had hopes that maybe he would be the Messiah. Now he can honor Jesus with the clean clothes, the clean cloths, the clean linen, and an uncut tomb. Maybe that's the best expression of sending him out of this world that he can do. So Joseph does it, Pilate allows it, and they put him in the tomb. Again, people are watching this. At the end of this passage, we have the two Marys that are mentioned specifically by name, but there are whole hosts of crowds that are watching all of this happen. Jesus was one of the biggest names in all of the land, and now they're watching him be put in a tomb. And then comes the description that after Joseph puts him in the tomb, he rolls a stone across the tomb. Now, there's nothing out of the ordinary with rolling a stone across a tomb. They lived in a time when, they believed very much in honoring their ancestors and honoring the dead. And so rolling the stone across an opening cut in the rock would allow them to continue honoring the dead by keeping thieves and grave robbers from it and keeping wild animals out from desecrating the body. They wanted to honor the body the best they could. But have you ever been at a funeral? Maybe you've had the unfortunate circumstances of burying a loved one, somebody close to you. You know, you can tell all the stories you want at a funeral, and you can laugh about what they were like, and you can tell, do you remember when they did that? Do you remember when they said that? Oh my goodness, that was so crazy. I can't believe they did that. Or you learn all sorts of things about somebody at their funeral, and it seems almost like it's going to be okay. And then you go to the graveside and you put them on the ground, and then the dirt starts going in. Those were always the moments for me with any of my grandparents or any of the other funerals that I've been a part of. Those were always the moments of finality. All the stories you want can be told, but that dirt is still going in over the box. All the hopes and expectations that you could have had for that life, you can retell them, and you can dwell on them, and you can question them all you want. But as the stone rolls across the tomb, there's a moment of finality. There's a moment of maybe this is the end. Of, you know what, he did raise the dead, but it doesn't look like that's happening anymore. Maybe Jesus was able to do it while he was living, but there's something different now. Maybe those on the fringes of Jesus' following and watching are thinking, you know what, something didn't add up. Something seemed a little fishy with this guy. I knew that he was a shyster. Or maybe you get a little bit closer into the edges of Jesus' circle, and you have people who are thinking, you know what, I had really hoped that this would be the one. It seemed like all the pieces were in place. Everything that we were looking for, it seemed to be in this person, Jesus, but I guess we were wrong. And then you get down to Jesus' closest followers. How could they not have questions? How could they not wonder what is happening? We gave 3 years of our lives to be with him. Scholars believe that Jesus spent 50% of his 3 years of ministry directly with those 12 disciples. Jesus spent 1.5 years out of 3 years directly with the 12 disciples. They've watched everything he did. They spent nights with him. They traveled with him. They were cold together. They were hungry together. They were in danger together. They saw the miraculous, and now they're looking at Jesus and saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. I don't even know how to explain what I'm seeing right now, but something is not right. And I had really thought when he was on the cross that he'd just be able to come down because we saw him do so much. And then even when they took him off the cross, I thought it's not the end. And then when they put him in the tomb, we thought we saw Lazarus come out of the tomb. It's going to be okay. But then they rolled the rock in front, and I thought, no, it's over. Everything that I thought I believed to be true is not corresponding with reality anymore. And the disciples and those who follow Jesus at varying levels are all watching what's happening, and they're just wondering what just happened. Here's something I want us to hold on to. Whether you've been in the church, whether you grew up in the church, or you're just starting to check out faith for the first time, it's okay. This is a takeaway for us. That even Jesus' closest followers struggled with questions and doubts. Even Jesus' closest followers struggled with questions and doubts. We know that, how could they not? Even if it's not directly told to us in Scripture, we do know this, that if you continue to read the story, you see that all of Jesus' closest 12, they all just kind of go their own way. Those who were fishing, they go back to fishing. They go back to their life as they knew it before Jesus. Have you ever had a really bad day or week or month or decade? And you get to the end of that time and you're like, I just want to go to sleep and I just want to pretend like this whole thing never happened. That's what it seems like Jesus' closest followers and friends are doing. That when they get to that closing of the tomb, they go back to their old way of life and they think, you know what, let's just pretend like none of this ever happened. Let's just pretend like this was all a bad dream. Because I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to reconcile my expectations with what's going on right now. Even Jesus' closest followers struggled with questions and doubts. So if we find ourselves in that place of wrestling these things out, we're in pretty good company. We started out asking, how can we be safe in the midst of that process, though? How can we be safe in asking our questions, in wrestling with doubts? At any level of the faith journey, wherever you find yourself, we want to be safe in our questioning and doubts. And there's a few ways that we can do that. The first way is that we have to understand that questions aren't an indictment of your eternal state. Questions are not an indictment of your eternal state. Sometimes when we wrestle with questions and doubts, we think, no, this defines me forever. We get stuck in the here and the now so often that when we make a bad judgment call or we do something wrong, we think, this is me forever. This is an indictment on who I am. But that's not true. That's not true. We have to look at this eternal scope, and we have to understand that our questions and doubts and wrestlings, they are not an indictment. They don't condemn us for an eternity apart from God. When we realize that, we can take the first step at approaching questions and doubts in a safe space. Secondly, more than anything maybe, we need to approach our search from a place of humility. We have to approach our search from a place of humility. We live in an age of skepticism, right? Skepticism is like the new thing. You seem more intelligent if you're skeptical, which is really ironic because actually I think it requires a little bit less intelligence to be skeptical. When I was a youth pastor, I had a student in my youth ministry, and his running joke was if you'd say something, his response would be, prove it. He didn't really care what you'd say after that. It was just a joke to him. Prove it. You know what it takes to be a skeptic? That's all you got to respond. Prove it. I say something, you say prove it. It doesn't take any creativity. It doesn't take a whole lot of energy to be skeptical. It also doesn't take any humility to be skeptical. You see, what skepticism does is it puts us in the place of God instead of God in the place of God. It says everything that I explore, every question that I ask, or every idea that I have, it must be right because I'm having it. I don't need to give you proof from my skeptical point of view, but anything that you say requires proof for me to accept it. That's a search void of humility. If we want to safely search, if we want to truly hold on to some element of faith regardless of the outcome of it, we have to do so in humility. Otherwise, we are going to miss the mark. We are going to be in an unsafe space. Even the idea of putting ourselves in the center makes us into something that we're not. You see, in order to lose the humility in the place of searching and to approach everything with skepticism, it's like forgetting that we are finite creatures. I mean, even if you just comparatively look around you or look at the society at large, you are just a speck in a vast ocean of sand. But if you were to put yourself in God's perspective of that for a moment, you are an infinitesimal grain of sand in the entire cosmos. We can be humble in our search when we realize that we have a finite and limited understanding of what's going on. We can search in humility when we realize that there are things we don't know, and there are things that we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know them. Right? There are things that you and I don't know that we don't know. We call that unconscious incompetence. You want to be humbled? Just realize you are unconsciously incompetent at a whole host of things. I'm even more so, okay? We have to search from a place of understanding that our perspective on things is very limited. Our understanding of what we know and what we don't know, of what we can comprehend, of what we can't, it's finite, it's limited. The Bible says we are simply dust. From dust we were formed, and to dust we'll return. Let's let that be the foundational mentality that we have as we go forward in searching. Once we capture those two things, we can grab onto the realization that you also don't know where hope is lurking. In the midst of our search, in the midst of our questioning, in the midst of our doubting, we can remain safe if we just simply understand you don't know where hope is lurking. I chose that word intentionally because lurking kind of has the connotation that something's going to pounce out and grab you or surprise you in some way. That's the reality of hope. That if we want to hold on to some level of identity of who we are, we can't divorce our faith from having some kind of hope. It's quite possible that as we look at the story of the followers of Jesus, as Jesus was put in the tomb for 3 days of darkness, not just killed, not just tortured, not just put in a tomb, but he was in there with the rock sealed over the entrance of the tomb. But they didn't know something very important. Scholar A.J. Swoboda says it like this: faith isn't just Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Faith is awkward Saturday too. Every Saturday is awkward Saturday for me. It's just my personality. So much is sitting in that tomb with the soon-to-be resurrected Lord. It's so dark, so damp, so scary. The silence is deafening. But there is hope in there. There is hope in there. But here's the thing, the disciples don't know that. They don't know that there's hope in there. They thought they had laid to rest all of their hope alongside the body of Jesus. They thought that the door was closed on hope when they rolled the stone over it. Friends, as we're questioning, as we're doubting, as we're wrestling things, hold on to some element of hope. That in the midst of the dampness, in the midst of the cold, in the midst of the questioning, the unraveling of life, that there might just be new life gestating inside the tomb. That there is something on the other side. That we don't just react against things and start questioning. We don't just go with this group of thinkers and then this group of thinkers. We have to hold on to an element of faith that there is hope on the other side of the wrestling. If we can do that, we can come out the other side of our questioning or any number of questionings, any number of doubtings, safely intact. We can approach questions not fearing them, but wondering where the revelation of Jesus is going to come. We can be with others in the midst of their questioning, and we can help hold in front of them the hope that resides in the tomb that they didn't even know about. We can hold that in front of them and say, hey, hold on, it's going to be okay. I know life didn't pan out the way you thought it would. I know that you're struggling with the questions and the doubts. But wait for that beautiful thing. Hold on long enough to see that beautiful thing. If we can hold on to an element of hope, we won't just give up our lives and go back to fishing thinking that, you know what, let's just pretend this was all a bad dream. Let's pretend like that never happened. Let's throw out everything and just go back to the way it was, as if we could ever do that to begin with. Let's hold on to this element of hope that there is new life available. And if we're willing to wrestle it out, we know that we're in good company because even Jesus' closest followers had questions and doubts. So it's going to be safe for us too. It's going to be okay. Let's hold on to that as we go into the rest of our week. Let's pray.